Welcome to week 5. It's amazing to think that we're nearly through this course. We've learned quite a bit over the past 4 weeks, but it's not over yet. We've got a few more questions to think about. In this video lecture, I want to consider more directly how Christian belief shapes Christian practice. Bill Madison refers to this as what he calls big picture belief. At the beginning of the course, I made a pretty sharp distinction between secular theories of ethics and Christian ethics. By this point, however, it should be clear that my sharp distinction isn't so sharp after all. There are problems with each of the secular theories, especially if they are taken on your own. But as you are learning in your group project this week, Christians make use of the best of what they see in secular theory because Christians do live in this world with people who do not share their beliefs. One of the complaints that Christians often come up against is that what they do seems to be no different from what other people do. For example, the corporate works of mercy, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and so on, are actions that many religious traditions hold as important. Humanistic atheists do these actions too. So what difference does God make? Likewise, scholars studying religion, who are different than theologians because they study religion as an object rather than as a participant, notes that even Christian practices like Eucharist and baptism are similar to food and water rituals in other traditions. Still other scholars have noted similarities between, for example, pagan rituals about the sun and Christmas, or pagan rituals about spring and Easter. As an aside, I should note that I think some of the scholarship on these things is spurious. That said, however, it does not change the widespread belief that Christianity is merely one among many, just one of the things people can choose in order to live a good life. So let me make a case that Christian belief makes an action different, even if it looks to outsiders like it is the same. There are many examples I could use. Here, let me consider marriage, a practice that both Christians and non-Christians have, and that can seem very similar. With apologies to both my Trinidadian students and my non-traditional students, I will focus here on the beliefs youth culture in the United States has about marriage, both in order to be brief and because this is what I have studied about the most when it comes to marriage. I welcome your own observations, however. In week 6, one of our forum discussions is on marriage and sex. I hope that people will feel free to bring in their own cultural experiences about marriage. Or alternatively, feel free to post about marriage in the question and clarification section of this week's module. But on to my point. A recent poll suggests that some 94% of young adults in the United States expect to marry, or expect that they have already married, their soulmate. Consider this word soulmate for a moment. It did not come out of thin air. It is a word that arises in relation to the way that we practice marriage as a whole. Note first the notion of soul. This is a semi-theological term, on purpose, but it is only semi-theological. The same studies suggest that people understand the word soul as related to ideas about spirituality, mutual attraction, and the perfection of one's potential spouse. To have a soulmate is to share leisure interests, political views, personal habits, personalities, sexual chemistry, and beliefs. Moreover, 88% of those polled believe that there is one perfect soulmate for every person in the world. Many commentators, not just theologians, have commented on the ways in which culture supports this central belief. First, there is a strong view of the idea of romance as necessary for marriage, compounded by films, books, plays, and other media that portray this kind of romance. On the other hand, there is also a strong sense of nostalgia, which many scholars say is misplaced. We have a mythic view of marriage as it was, supposedly, in the 1950s, and this becomes the model for marriage today. The practices of marriage that might stem from this strongly held belief about soulmate include that we would date many people in order to find the one. We marry later in order to ensure that one has found one's soulmate. We live together and have sex outside of marriage in order to ensure that this person is, indeed, my compatible soulmate, perfect in every way. Marriages are not a sacrament so much as they are simply a legal recognition of the fact that two people have found their soulmate. Wedding ceremonies are therefore meant to be fun and unique, reflecting the unique character of the couple, and many wedding ceremonies will therefore take place in unique locations, beaches, mountaintops, and with themes like Aladdin. Because of the vague spiritual connection, marriages will not often occur before clergy, but before a justice of the peace or other secular representative. Consider by contrast what the Church has generally meant by the words soul and mate. We could vaguely say that soul is about spirituality and perfection in Christian theology, but only vaguely. In Christian belief, souls are just part of what it means to be human being, along with the body. We cannot have one without the other. Moreover, human souls are not perfect. Instead, humans aim toward friendship and union with God, who alone is perfect. Humans know that they sin, but they seek forgiveness for that sin. It is not clear, then, that in Christian belief there is any one perfect or right person that we could call a soulmate. Indeed, Paul is extremely pragmatic about marriage. Get married if the sexual desire is going to distract you from your calling as God's disciple, he maintained. See 1 Corinthians 7. That is less about perfection than it is about responding to human biology. So instead, Christian belief about marriage stems from a central belief in salvation history, that is, about God's action in the world. Consider the main event in salvation history. First, with creation. At creation, God creates male and female for the twin purposes of being together and for having children, as we see in Genesis 1 and 2. In the fall, we see that it is not only the relationship between God and us that is destroyed, it is also that humans become separated from each other. There is a gulf that we cannot bridge. We see ourselves as wholly separate beings. We see ourselves as having no way to communicate with each other. With the coming of Jesus Christ, marriage is not only restored, but is given an even greater character. For Catholics, marriage is a sacrament, which means in part that the relationship reminds us of Christ's relationship with the Church, as we see in Ephesians 5. It also means that marriage itself is meant to be a vehicle of discipleship by God's grace, and it means that Christians pay particular attention to Jesus' prohibition of divorce. And then, finally, eschatology, or the end of time. All Christians will be both married, because Christ marries the church, and single, because as Jesus said, there is no marriage between individual people in heaven. What kind of practices might result in relation to these beliefs? Well, we have a strong tradition of blessing marriage, or a practice of getting married by a clergy member, the idea of lifelong fidelity, the idea that marriage is about cultivating Christian discipleship. In Catholic belief, of course, contraception and the understanding that marriage is about having children in part is linked to these beliefs. There is much more that I could say about both of these beliefs. What I want you to note, however, is that first of all, even though marriage on the outside will look the same for couples thinking one or the other of these beliefs, in that the couple joined together and signed a legal document, the understandings and intentions and whole way of life that the couple lives will likely be different. Second, Christians, of course, might well be participating in the first story as well as in the second. As we know, there are plenty of Christians who think a hodgepodge of beliefs about marriage, some of which relate to Christian belief and some of which do not. Third, note especially that each of these beliefs requires a particular way of life that embodies those beliefs. Note that the idea soulmate does not stand in isolation. It is not a belief that someone just came up with on a street corner, but is supported by media messages and by the practices that people have surrounding marriage. How then do virtues relate to this? Christians need to be about the business of thinking through very critically what beliefs their own actions demonstrate. This is part of what makes Christian ethics exactly about Christian discipleship. As we investigate our actions and think about them, we also find ourselves on the spiritual journey that hopefully leads us closer toward God. This week, as we think about the theological virtues, we will most especially want to think about how belief and practice relate. The theological virtues, as Bill Madison relates, require God and are central in Christian thought for what it means to be a follower of Christ. One who loves well, hopes much, and has great faith is one who is also capable of acting out what it means to witness to the reign of God in our world.